Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are shuffling student learning using playlists and checklists. So we are excited to have everybody here, and I know I'm excited to learn about this session. So I'll go ahead and hand off to Melissa.
Hello, everybody. Melissa Summerford. I'm the GEG Texas leader, and I'm an instructional technologist here in Texas. And oh my goodness, we have Meredith Akers today. Okay, I got to tell, this woman has changed my life because I was a third grade teacher when I first met her, and I met her at an ed camp. So, ed camps are fantastic for meeting people. That's how I met Meredith. And I started connecting with her. She would share all of these cool things on Twitter, and she shares everything. So I use those in my classroom. So get ready because she's going to blow your mind away.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I am Meredith Akers. I'm a principal in Cypress Fairbanks ISD. I'm the principal at Rennell Elementary. And I also blog at meredithakers.com. And I love to share templates and ideas and strategies. And I'm of the mindset that teachers should share for free because we have so much that we pay for on our own already. So all my stuff on my website is just free because I want to share ideas and give credit to others who've inspired ideas. So I'm excited to share with you today. Melissa said, hey, let's talk about student learning playlists together. And I was so just honored that she thought of me. So I can't wait to share some ideas with you guys today.
I know. Are you kidding me? I have goosebumps. I can't believe we're doing this. I've never in a million years, Meredith. Let's get started. So differentiated learning. Well, when I think of differentiated learning, that was one thing that I became obsessed with. How are we going to meet the needs of all my students? I always felt like I was meeting the middle students, and I felt like sometimes that maybe the higher students were being left out or the lower students. How was I going to differentiate? So that's really when I started going to those ed camps. I wanted to find a solution to my problem, and that was the problem I was having. So I started graduate school and I started learning some different ways, and one of the ways was incorporating COVA, choice, ownership, voice, through authentic learning experiences, and how can we make these personalized and self-paced for students. So that was one of the things that I've tried, and it really changed my classroom when I did it. So this is what I'm talking about: choice, ownership, letting students choose some of their path. When you start giving them a choice, they start taking ownership in their learning and really giving them a voice. Because I began to have students who were saying, Ms. Summerford, I like this idea you have on here, but I was wondering if I could try this. And it was one of my students. And that moment when she did that, it wasn't like, oh no, you have to do it this way. I was like, that's what I wanted. I wanted them to start thinking of ways that they can design their own learning experiences. And when she asked me that, I was so excited. She looked at me like, Miss Summerford, why are you smiling and jumping up? So that is what I go for. That's what I went for in my class, those kind of things. Just creating that environment where students are leaders in the classroom and they're coming to you with some ideas. Amazing. I love that little girl.
And you know what? I love that you've put ownership really big, because I truly believe when you give students even little choices, let them have voice in how they're going to learn, they have so much more ownership. And if you've never tried out blended learning or having a checklist or letting students have some choice in their playlist of learning, we're going to talk a lot about that today. But a lot of teachers initially are worried, oh my gosh, classroom management is going to be out of control. I just can't let everybody choose their own path. But the opposite often happens. And I think we'll probably talk about that more, that if you go slow and really train your kiddos, instead of having more discipline problems, you're going to have less, because, oh, I got to choose this. This is what I want to do first. When you feel like everything's completely out of control, educators, we know how that feels right now. When it feels like everything is a little bit out of control, we act up a little bit. Maybe I've acted up a little. You can ask my husband.
You're so right.
But when I feel like I have kind of control, I have that ownership. And so that discipline goes down. And we can feel that and relate, can't we?
Yes, and it's so true. But it all starts with your mindset too. Like you have to be willing just to try those things. When I was going through this transformation of who I was and as a teacher, like I started changing, I started letting go of like where do the pencils go or where does the paper go? Like there's a pencil, grab it. Like I changed like my whole classroom changed. I started doing more flexible seating, work where you're comfortable with. Now I took away nameplates, like assigned seats, because when we go to conferences and different things, we want to sit by our friends most of the time, and that was. I never saw that like as a problem because the students would like if I had someone sitting like on the bouncing bar or in that area, like I saw students get up and move, and I'm like, "Is everything okay?" Well, I'm just gonna move because we're really friends, and he's talking to me a lot, so I want to move where I can concentrate. Like I started seeing that, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe like they're seeing this for themselves," and really I started reading all these educational books, and I started going to conferences, putting myself out there, presenting, and just learning, like just actively learning and growing as an educator. And I think that's where it all starts before you can dive into like, oh, I'm just going to different. You've got to really like study it and research it and own it yourself.
I agree. Absolutely. And, some of you may be thinking when Melissa said, and kids just make the right choice. We know we're not crazy. Melissa and I both know there might be one or two kiddos that are in your mind that you're thinking, I don't think this one would have made the right choice in that situation. And so you adjust for that and you maybe assign that one friend a seat, but let everybody else have that choice. And then he can earn choosing that. We know that not every kid is perfect every day, but they really will surprise you and start to make those right choices when you have conversations like, I'd love to let you choose where you sit, but when you choose to sit by so-and-so, I've noticed this pattern. And then they start to make the right choice because they want to be able to show you they can do it.
Yes, exactly. They start looking at it like she's going to let me decide. Like I get to choose this. Like they like that. It was such an eye opener to see like the kids being able to have that ownership and decide like, wow, I like coming in here. I want to be in here just because of the things that teachers can do to give them that voice.
Absolutely. I wanted to share if you're not sure what we're even talking about yet, or if it's just been a while and you need a refresh, the Christensen Institute defines blended learning as leveraging the internet to afford each student a more personalized learning experience, meaning increase student control over those things we were just talking about: time, place, path, or pace of his or her learning. So it's making sure that they have some kind of choice, some kind of control over what time do I do this part, or what place, like Melissa was just saying, do I do it on the bouncy ball or do I do it over here? Or maybe the path that they do it or the pace. Maybe I know this is going to take me a little bit longer to do this part of the assignment, but this next thing, I'm fast at that. So giving them some leeway that we're not all cookie cutter and can do everything in 20-minute chunks, letting them have some control over those bits. So that's time, place, path, and pace. And even if we're teaching remotely at some point this school year, I know some of us already know, yes, we're teaching remotely. Some of us know we're teaching face-to-face as of right now. This is things that can be done whether you're face-to-face with kids or whether they're not in the same room as you. You can give students a choice where they sit. You can give students a choice of, hey, this total should take you an hour, but you can choose how long you take on each thing. But we do have to give them some parameters. And we're going to talk about those parameters and ways to set your kids up for success today. At the bottom, before we go on, I want to remind everyone, if you need to grab a copy of this slide deck, because we are going to share several templates and say, hey, here's the link to that template if you want to take it and tweak it for your own use. At the bottom of this slide and most of the slides, it has a bit.ly link, and it's bit.ly/shuffle, and shuffle is in lowercase letters, and then SL for student learning, and SL is capital. If you want to write that down, jot it down, or open that up in another tab, that's where you can grab every link, everything we shared today about student learning and how to shuffle student learning. Melissa?
That's right. So whenever I started in my classroom, I started to think about, because I did it during my station rotation. I was trying to find a way so I can slowly go into it and try it out and see how it'll work. I started putting my kids into teams and then giving them just kind of the path. I started off with learning paths, which, playlist learning paths, but so their learning path was geared on to what they needed based on like observations, data. I took all that and I placed them into different teams. And the thing that helped too, that the kids, when they work through these paths, is having that choice at the bottom, because they knew that if they worked through these activities that I had them assigned, then at the end they would be able to choose a few different things to work on. So that choice, having that choice in there, really motivated them to get done. Because I had some kids that were on did RTI, and they had to have so many minutes on online programs, and I noticed when I put this choice at the bottom, like they were doing it at home. They're like, "Oh, Miss Summer, I finished." Like, "You did? Let me get there. Let me check." "Oh, yeah, you did." "Okay, move on." Like, oh my gosh, like they were doing it at home. I was celebrating that.
To the part where they chose.
Yes, because
Wow.
they wanted to move on to their next selection. So it really motivated. So this was the first, the option I started with. The next option is, this is the back. So I did have some kind of accountability. So I knew, what they were doing in class. And as they were working through their playlist, I would go out and my small groups, I came to them. So, if I had team 2, they were doing Solve Around the Room. I went to them. I'd get them started, ask some questions, and then maybe I'd go check on team 1. So I was continuously rotating. And then it was so flexible. Even if I needed to pull a kid, maybe I noticed like during the mini lesson, I would say, "Hey, Andrew, will you come sit with me at the table? Let's go over. I noticed some of these things that were happening during the lesson. I want to just kind of confer with you and see how you're feeling about it." So it was so flexible, and that's what I liked about it.
Yeah. So it opened you up to have time to individualize and personalize. Hey, I'm going to go right to them and help them with what they're working on.
Yes, because I always felt like before, like I was missing out meeting with my GT kids. I was missing out meeting with, I wanted to make sure that I was spread out among everybody. I wanted them to all have an equal amount of time with me. And so
Absolutely.
This is what worked out. So now, I've taken this to my school, and we've kind of like revamped it. Like I had a teacher, we collaborated. She was like, "Hey, I want to do this." So then we started looking at how can we develop here? Still the same content in teams, but we just changed it up a little bit because I work with her, I learned from her, and we added and made it even different. So there's not a right or wrong reason, I guess. It's whatever worked for you and your students.
Right.
So that's how I did that. We did even have like accountability sheet too. And not everything has to be digital. Some things were like in her classroom, like go to, and even in mine, go to this table, do this activity, because we can't let go of pencil and paper. We need that still. Like I'm a notebook person. I got my little notebook down here. So can't let go of pencil and paper. It's important too.
Got to have a balance of those kinds of activities.
Yes, I agree.
So on my campus, Melissa was saying she called them at first learning paths, then she called them playlists. On my campus, we use lots of blended learning checklists, and we call it a checklist, but really all these things, the kids are checking off. Yes, I did this. It's all the same thing. We just have different names for it. But we try to always include in ours a mini lesson with the teacher, some independent activity that the child is doing on their own. And usually that is non-digital. So just like Melissa was saying, we want to have a balance between digital activities and non-digital activities. Then we always include some digital content, and we like to include some future ready content. And what we mean by future ready is we want it to either be some kind of long-term project that they're working on, because in their future lives, think about us, we're always working on some kind of long-term project. And or it's collaborative. And I shouldn't say or on that. It's always collaborative. We want them to be working together, because when you look at the research of what companies are saying kids need more work on and they need help from schools, it's those collaboration and communication skills. So we want to get them collaborating and communicating with each other in that future ready studio. And typically our future ready is not about getting a grade from kids. It's not about getting a grade. It's about communication on the content. It's about collaborating with the content. So it's about helping them internalize and learn and discuss the content. It's the independent and the digital where we might get a grade. And that mini lesson is when the teacher is actually teaching. But we really try, when we're doing our blended learning checklist, not to have a whole group lesson. Now, I am not one that says no whole group ever. If it's brand new content, I might see my teachers doing whole group, but most of the time, or if it's like a lab where all the kids need to be, experimenting, we're all doing the same thing at the same time. That is very highly possible. But most often, you will see some students are working on independent, some are working on digital, some are working on future ready, and the teacher has called together for her mini lesson like Melissa was saying, hey, I need just my highest group, my GT kids, and I'm going to go through their lesson. And when we talked about blended learning lets you have control over that pace for the GT kids, they might not need as long to understand that and be ready to head off to independent. And so then maybe they had just a 5 or 10 minute mini lesson and they're off. And then maybe you call your students that are, middle of the road. You do your mini lesson with them. Then you've saved some extra time to have a longer mini lesson with kids that maybe in the pre-assessment you realized I know they're struggling with this. This is going to be tough for them. So I'm going to take more time. I'm going to make sure they're ready before I tell them, okay, now go try your independent. So those are the 4 studios that we include in our checklists. And sometimes we add more. Sometimes there might be a vocabulary studio or something in addition, but these are the 4 core ones that we always include. Now, I don't know about you, but even hearing Melissa talk about her success, you might be thinking like, I'm ready to jump in. I'm ready to dive in. This sounds great. But I'm going to encourage you, just dip your toe in, because if you jump in, you might be like, oh, oops, I'm over my head here. So just dip your toe in a little bit at a time. And I want to encourage you on how to do that. So I'm going to take you through kind of the steps that we do at Rennell at my school when we're trying to, okay, we're going to dip our toe in, not just for us, but for the kids. Can you imagine a student that's never had any kind of checklist like this and you going from regular, maybe I should say it like this, old school, traditional, I teach a lesson, you all do independent work. Then I teach, and that's what they're normal used to. And then like, here's a checklist. You're on your own. Go your own pace. Sit where you'd like. That would be a crazy classroom. If you go from
Right,
zero
I
to that.
know. And it is a process. I'm glad, like, had to figure it out and by myself. So if I would have had this where it's like oh my gosh, it would have made my life easier. So yes, take our advice. It is a process.
Let's talk about some baby steps and how to dip our toe in and get there to that kind of classroom that Melissa ended up having. So this is what I want you to remember. For big success, it's best to start small. And I think that's really true in a lot of things in life. For big success, it's best to start small and then look for like incremental progress, a little bit of growth at a time. So that's my biggest advice.
Yes, that's good for everybody, because sometimes I just want to go big or go home,
Right. And I'm that way too. I'm like, I have this great idea. Let's jump in. But I'm saying this is one that we're going to start small. So let's say you've never done anything like this and you're ready to get started. Start with just a 1-day checklist. And look how simple this checklist is. Mini lesson, here's your directions, and there's a checkbox for the kids. Digital content, here's the directions. The directions might be, log into Freckle. That's a program we use. Or log into, like Melissa's example, log into iLearn, set a timer, for 20 minutes. Future ready, you're going to collaborate on these task cards with a partner. Independent, this is the worksheet you're going to complete, or this is the activity. And then in this example, I included a vocabulary station as well. And then at the bottom of that checklist, I've got share a summary of your learning today in 1 complete sentence. 1, because all kids need to work on writing in complete sentences. And 2, because I just want to get a feel. This is the first time we've ever done this. Let's get a feel for what they felt about this learning. And then we like to include also, how'd you feel about your learning today? I need more information. I feel pretty good, or I feel like I could teach this. So for this, when you're first starting, even though I said one of those Christensen Center, one of their kind of rules for is it blended learning or not is you're giving kids some kind of control over their pace. When you're starting out, you've got to give them some of that internal clock of how long it feels. So I say use a group timer. When you're starting out, set a group timer and you're saying, hey, group A, you guys are all in the mini lesson with me. Group B, your digital content. Group C. So we're doing a station rotation and you're telling them every 20 minutes we're moving, or every 10 or however long, 12, however long it works with your schedule. Tell them where to start. Tell them what to move to next. This is something great to like project on your board or have up on your board so that they know this is where I'm starting. This is where I'm going next. So at first, you're still kind of in control. You're just getting them used to using a checklist. You're getting them used to moving in different parts of the room. I would say do this 3 or 4 times. Don't give up the first time if it's tough. Do it 3 or 4 times so they get used to it. Okay, now they know what is expected of them in independent. They know what's expected of them in digital content. Then you can move to maybe more days at a time, or you could start adding in, okay, today, instead of setting a group timer, I'm going to allow you to move at your own pace. I'm going to tell you where to start and then just move on when you're ready. I remember I walked into one of my teacher's classrooms one day and I asked a student, what are you working on? because everybody was working on different things. They were doing a checklist, but she was already moved on to that point of everybody was moving at their own pace. And I asked him, what are you working on? And he's telling me about it. And then I said, how do you know when to move on? I just wanted to see what he would say. I didn't know if he would say, maybe he would have said, when I'm done is when I move on, Miss Akers, duh. But he said, oh, I just logged on. He had a Chromebook in front of him. And he said, I went to another tab and just said, she told me all I have to do is say 10-minute timer. If you didn't know that, in Google, you don't even have to go to YouTube or anything. If you just Google whatever minute timer, it'll just start one. And so I was like, excellent. He knows exactly what he's doing. He set the timer and then he logged on. So if you would like a copy of this checklist to get you started, even if it's not your perfect thing, sometimes it's nice to just have an example. You can grab a copy of that here. And again, I know that you can't click on the screen on YouTube right now. You can go to bit.ly/shuffle SL, and shuffle is lowercase and SL is capital to get all these links. So then when you're ready, you might want to move on to a 2-day checklist. We are the Rennell Redhawks at my campus. And so this is our logo here in the top. And so this is our Rennell checklist that we have for our 2-day checklist. And you can see the teacher has even planned here. It says group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. So we did this so when the teachers are planning, they're even thinking about how am I going to differentiate for different groups? You know, in this group, I might do question 1 and 2. In this group, I'm going to do, so it's just some notes for the teacher there. And then for the students, they would just circle, I'm in group 3 today. When she calls group 3, I'm coming. So they know one day they're going to have a mini lesson. The second day, they're going to have a mini lesson with their teacher. Each day they are to try to accomplish one thing in each of the areas. So in this section, we've started to give our students, hey, we want you to move at your own pace. So set a timer yourself. We bought a lot of little kitchen timers. We also, like at the dollar store, we bought some of those sand timers. There's really awesome, they're a little bit more expensive, but there's some really awesome light timers that some of my teachers have that you can check out on Amazon that if they turn, it looks like a cube. And if you turn it a certain way, one side is 5, one side is 10, and it will light up when their time is up. So that way it's not making a noise. So that's a neat option as well. But we ask our kiddos, hey, set your own timer at this point so that they know it should take me about this long. That way, when that 10-minute timer goes off, let's say if it was an activity that should take them about 10 minutes, that doesn't mean stop and move on. They still are allowed to go, you know what, I only have 1 left. I think I can go ahead and finish. Or, oh no, the timer's ticking down. I better hurry up. But it doesn't mean the timer went off and you must move on. It's just helping them get that feeling of this is how long this is supposed to take me. This is that time when we moved to, okay, guys, it's time to be able to choose where you sit. Or some of our teachers set up zones for different activities. So we said, like, this is the Future Ready Studio, because these are where the task cards are that you're going to work with a partner on. So when you're ready to do the Future Ready Studio, to do that collaborative work, you're going to go to this zone in the classroom and look for a partner to do that with. That doesn't mean you guys can't get those cards and move somewhere else. It's just a place of they know here's where they're set up. Also, like computers, typically the digital all happens in the same place because that's where the computers are set up in the classroom. Again, we included a performance rubric where we said, hey, rate your performance on these activities this week. I think I did awesome. I understand. Or I think I might need some help with this. So this is just some private feedback. And then we also asked, what was your favorite activity this week? And what would you like to add for next week? So it's fun to get that feedback from them on what would help you learn better next week. Sometimes we get silly answers on that, but sometimes they have really valuable, like, I think I need to go back and review some of the multiplication facts. Can we add a multiplication fact station next week? Because I realized in my independent that I didn't have them as fast as I should. Sometimes we get some great feedback from the kids.
And they will. That's right. I remember, when I was putting mine, like one of them, like I took a picture of it because she was like, had to use my growth mindset because I wanted to give up on a problem Miss Summerford said. I was like, oh my gosh, like you do get some amazing feedback from it, especially if you respond back to them.
Yes. They love getting that response back. Okay. So let's say you made it maybe 3 or 4 times on a 2-day checklist. So that could take you maybe up to a month. Maybe you try it out a couple of days one week. You do go back to your regular teaching style for a couple of days. You try it again a couple of days with a 2-day checklist. But once you've tried it 3 or 4 times, you're ready to move on. Let's try a 3-day checklist. So consider more ways to give students ownership over time, place, path, or pace. Remember, those are those 4 defining factors of what makes it truly blended learning. One way that we did this on my example that I'm sharing that we use at Rennell is we added a choice board for the Future Ready section. So if you'll notice, I'm going to try to point to it here. Still, we've got mini lesson. They're just checking off. Yes, I went to the mini lesson day 1. I went day 2. I went day 3 with my teacher when she called me. And I didn't mention this, but the way we run it, at this point, the kids are moving on their own. They go where they want to go. But if the teacher calls for you, you stop what you're doing and you come to the mini lesson, right? So even if they're in the middle of an activity, they might take their sand timer and just turn it flat so that they know this is about how much time I was on my independent, but the teacher called me to her table for the mini lesson. So I'm going to stop and then I can come back and finish that independent. So just a side note. So here we've got mini lesson, independent, digital content, and they're checking off 1, 2, 3. I did Freckle one day, and I did the boom card assignment. And what the kids really love at this point is they don't have to go in order. Remember, we're giving them that choice of their path, even of their pace of which activity. So they might choose to do boom cards the first day because they really like that better. Or maybe they hate boom cards. So they want to do that first because they like Freckle and they want to do dessert. So then in the Future Ready, we've given 1 activity, 2 activities, but then it says, choose items on the Future Ready choice board that add up to blank points. So you could, as the teacher, know, you know what, this activity is pretty easy. It helps them practice, but I'm going to say create a video. That's fun. They'll really love that. I'm going to say you get 15 points for that. Write a story. That's a little tougher. I'm going to give them 20 points if they write a story that includes, these 4 vocab words, something like that. So you could give them some choices and say, choose one of these or maybe 2. They have to add up to a certain number of points. So we started incorporating a choice board within the checklist.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, Meredith. I like that idea. Yeah, I'm already going to steal a lot of these ideas from me. Where were you?
Excellent.
Where was this 3 years ago, Meredith? How come you had to tell me? I had to figure it out.
Excellent. Well, you see at the bottom, Melissa and I were talking earlier about how, Melissa said so many of her kids just started, their behavior was amazing. They started responding to her, choosing, hey, I shouldn't sit by him, even though he's my best friend because I won't get as much work done. And so I mentioned sometimes that doesn't happen for every kid, right? I think we can all think of kids that we had to help teach them that. And that's part of our job is to help teach them that. So we started to add in when we got to this point in our growth as a campus. At the bottom, you'll notice it says working toward set timer blank completed. So this is working toward. We didn't necessarily do this for every kid, but a lot of kids, we would say working toward, and maybe it's something they really love. So it's a game on the computer that they want to play. And so they know if I finish everything, I get 15 minutes on a game at our school. Kids love Prodigy, and it is.
They do.
It is not. When you get to the upper grades, it's not teaching them a lot of math anymore, but they love it still. So sometimes it would be like working for Prodigy. It could be working for Lego time. And okay, you earned it. And some of our kids, we might let them earn that each day, depending on a kid and their need. And of course, you can absolutely steal this and tweak it. So I've got a copy of this 3-day checklist right here at the bottom. And if you want to get to that, it's at that link it's in the YouTube chat, but we're going to share it again on this next slide, bit.ly/shufflesl, so that you can get any of these templates that Melissa and I are sharing. So everything that I shared with you so far, we literally at Rennell would print that and let kids have a piece of paper in front of them so they could take it with them. They liked being able to physically, I'm like this too with the to-do list. I want to be able to go, check, I did it. That's done. That feels good. But how can playlists work? How can checklists work for my remote students? Right? So how could that possibly work? Well, I brainstormed some ideas. So the first idea I had was, what if we have a drag and drop for students to be able to, it looks very similar. This was actually one that I made for my daughter when we were at home, and I printed it when we were doing learning at home in the spring. And so when I was working, being a principal, she would check off with a piece of, with a pencil and a piece of paper. But I thought, I think I can adapt Madison's checklist by adding a drag and drop. So here I have stacked up like 30 X's on top of each other. And it says to the students, drag an X into the corresponding box when you complete the activity. So this way students can still keep track. Yes, I had the mini lesson. I can grab an X and drag it up there. They're going to think, wow, how did she do this? This X is like never ending. But it's really just that we've duplicated it a bunch of times and made a stack of like 30 X's all on top of each other. So this is one idea, one way. This was my first thought. And here's how I made it, just if you're wondering, how did she stack all those? I went and got an X and I drew my X. Then I went back and changed the fill to black and the line to transparent. And then I went Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, which is duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. I'm going to go right above and click and drag across all of them to highlight all of them. And then I'm going to right click and say align vertically, make them all go to the top. And then I'm going to right click again and say align horizontally, make them all go to the left. Now they're on top of each other. And I can just drag them over.
That's amazing. That's just like the smartboard tool when you clone. You
Right.
just did that.
So it's like the smartboard tool. That's exactly right. I couldn't remember the name of it, but I used to love the smartboard clone
Me
tool.
too.
That's when I had a smartboard. I don't have one anymore. We have a different thing in our district. But I love this. Think about, even if you don't use this checklist, this tip might help you when you're thinking about creating maybe math manipulatives so that your students Google Slides in the same way, but they could drag over math manipulatives to show their answer and turn that. So this is a great little tip for how to get them all on top of each other without you having to drag them on top of each other 100 times. So it's like a
Yeah, that's what I did before.
clone hack.
I always do things the long way, the hard way.
So another idea, after I thought of that idea, then someone who reads my blog, a friend of mine who reads my blog, wrote to me and said, do you think this might be easier in Google Sheets? And I was like, yes, I do. Why didn't I think of that? So I said, I'll make one right now. And I updated, within an hour, I updated my original blog post to include this checklist. And the reason that I made it landscape instead of portrait is because this way, when the student pulls up Google Sheets, everything fits on one screen. So they can see the whole checklist without having to scroll down or change the view. And so same idea. I've got mini lesson, future ready, independent, digital content. I've let them know, hey, even if you're at home learning remotely, you can set your timer for 20 minutes. I included that self-assess. How did you do? And then I changed my sentence here because really, if they're learning remotely, or if we're starting the school year, not being able to interact as closely as we normally do, right? We need a spot for our kids just to tell us anything they want to tell us. Mm-hmm. That sometimes surprises us. So is there anything else you'd like to share with your teacher? I have been amazed by when I ask that question. Sometimes I get really personal stuff that we would never have thought to ask about. So I changed that up for the possibility of remote learning or even just having to learn with all these tough standards. So if you would like to grab a copy of either of those or both of those, this is my blog post. You can grab a copy of both that online checklist where I showed dragging and dropping, or I didn't show this, but on this one, you guys, on the checkboxes, if you add checkboxes in Google Sheets, what's really cool is all they have to do is literally click on the box and it adds a check. So for students, this is way easier than dragging. Just check. So this is a great way to, and they could, if they're learning remotely, you could instruct them, hey, pull this open in one tab, do the activity in the other tab. That way you can go back and forth and go, I did it, check. What else do I need to do? Check. It feels good to check things off the to-do list.
It does, even for adults.
So what about taking playlists even further? How could we take playlists in a new direction? I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Bold School, if you have heard of that. It's by Weston Kieschnick, and he talks about Hattie's strategies. And you guys, I know you've heard of that, Hattie's research, where he takes all the different strategies for teaching students and evaluates what's the effect size. And that word means, effect size means how much does it affect student learning? How much do they grow? And he puts a number to it based on research. So one of the top 10 strategies for actually helping students grow more than a year's worth of growth in a year is using the jigsaw strategy. And I thought a couple of years ago, how can I take this further? And I feel like it's even more valid and valuable right now when we're all faced with the possibility of teaching remotely. And so this is a way to do the jigsaw strategy remotely, to give those GT kids a project and something to do when they're that fast finisher done at home. What else can I do? Hey, you've got another assignment to do. So let me tell you about this really high yield strategy that research shows, hey, kids learn and retain it better with this strategy. How can we take that online? How can we use it with remote learning? If you're not sure about the jigsaw strategy, that's when one person learns part of it, another person learns part of it, a third person learns part of it, and then you teach each other so that you all know the parts. So this is why it's effective. William Glasser's research says we learn 10% of what we read, So assigning kids to read, they're going to retain about 10%. We learn 20% of what we hear. So after today, I hope you retain more than 20, but probably if you're just listening, you're retaining 20. 30% of what we see. So I do have slides, so maybe my score is going up a little. 50% of what we see and hear. 70% of what we discuss. So that's why the chat feature is important. Feel free to be discussing.
Yes.
50% of what we experience. So if you actually go in and click on some of these checklists and experience it and touch it and try that out, you're going to retain more. But then here's the big number. We learn 95% of what we teach others. You guys, that's why if you taught first grade 12 years ago, you still remember every single bit of the content because you taught it to others. It's been a long time since I taught second grade, but I can still tell you all about dinosaurs and the cumulonimbus clouds and all the different types of clouds. My kids, I drive them nuts because when we're driving, I'm always like naming the type of clouds because that was in my content as a second grade teacher. And so that's why we remember it, but we need to help our kids with that. We know it really well because we're teaching it, but if we have them teach it, they'll learn it even better. So what does this have to do with playlists, you may be thinking? Well, here is my way of taking playlists further. So this is my example that I would set up and share with students. Remember, I just said I taught second grade. So in second grade, part of my content was teaching the types of animals. So I would present to my whole class as the teacher to be the model. Hey, this is Mrs. Akers' learning playlist about types of animals. I'm going to release you guys to do this on your own, but when it's your turn for Digital Content Studio, I want you to start by watching the video that I've included. I just want you to get that little hook, learn a little tiny bit about animals. It's only 3 minutes long, but watch my little video. Then I want you to do each of the things in the bubbles that I have. So you're going to read, you're going to check out this website. So that's where the students would click and it would take them to a website to see the 6 main categories of animals and they're divided into and the characteristics of each. Read up so you'll pass my quiz. Then in the center, it says quiz, enter game code, and it has the game code at this website to self-assess how much you've learned about types of animals so far. And then create either a short selfie video with webcamera.io or a Google drawing telling 2 differences between 2 types of animals. Example, 2 differences between reptiles and fish. So in either way, they have the same like rubric. You're telling me 2 differences between 2 types of animals. I gave them 2 options that they had already experienced in my classroom. I wouldn't have said make a video on webcamera.io if they'd never used that. I wouldn't say go make a drawing if they've never used that. So if they haven't used those things in your classroom, you might say make a Google slide or draw it on paper, make a paper-sized poster. So those are options. Then I included some graphics because that helps our minds remember. We all know that if there's a picture associated, it helps us. So I've got, here's the 5 different types of animals. And then last, post your completed product under the correct shelf at this class Padlet. I'm not going to take you through all of those, but that was my example to the students. And I would have them work through it so they could experience it on the learner side. Then I would show them, now you guys are going to be the teacher. I'm going to divide up the content. I gave an overview of all on the last slide. You know, these 3 students, you guys are in charge of mammals, and these 3, you're in charge of reptiles. And here's what you're going to do. On the outside of the slide, it says step 1, change your name and your topic in the title. Step 2, follow the directions in each of the boxes to select tasks to help your classmates learn about your topic. Delete the words in each box to replace them with your learning task. Step 3, on the far side of the box, change fonts, colors, and layouts of the learning menu to make it look awesome. So I'm making sure they do the content first because kids love to make it look awesome. But wait, do the content first, then make it look awesome. And then step 4, delete all these yellow boxes on the outside to indicate to your teacher and your classmates that your learning playlist is ready. So that's their cue. Okay, I've deleted all the instructions. It's ready. So then here's the important part for the teacher. I would not ever want to say to kids, whether they're pre-K or 12th grade, I would not want to say to kids, just go find an article about mammals because they might find something real naughty that, yes, has the word mammals, but that's not what we wanted them to search for, right? So instead, as their teacher, I have created a list that has pre-approved teacher websites. So I've gone through and said, here's 5 on mammals, here's 5, but you need to skim them and choose which one is best for your classmates to read. So they really are becoming the expert. They're at least looking at all of them because they want to make sure it's the coolest one that they pick for their classmates. Then I tell them, okay, make a 10-question quiz in Google Forms or Quizzes for your classmates to self-check themselves. And then they're going to change that box to be the quiz, just like my example. And then ask your classmate to create a product. over here, just like mine, choose a video from this teacher provided list of videos. So I've already chosen, here's some videos about mammals. Here's some videos about reptiles. You watch them all and pick the best one for your classmates to be able to watch. So they're putting it together with safe things that you've chosen, but they're becoming the expert. I love this idea for, yes, doing it for a jigsaw, letting them work ahead. And if you want this template, even if you're thinking this spurred a different idea, grab it so that you can tweak it and make it your own. But what I really like about this way for remote learning, if you have fast finishers, if you have GT students, you can even have those kids work on something that you're not ready to teach the rest of the class. Hey, I want you to work on this learning playlist for something we're going to do next 9 weeks, but I need you to get it ready. You're going to be the expert in the class. Do you know how awesome that's going to make them feel, that you pump them up?
That's right, it does.
So this could be used for blended learning. If we're face-to-face, that could be one of your assignments, whether independent or your digital content. It could be used for station rotation work. And like I just mentioned, it could be that extension for GT or early finishers. So if you'd like that, I have a whole blog post on it where I explain it step by step. I know I just went really fast right now because I want to make sure we get to all of our content, but you can see my step-by-step directions. I think I even have a video walking you through it as the teacher of how to get that ready. And so you can grab a copy of that. It's at this link, but if you just joined us, you can go to bit.ly/shufflesl to have access to all these links.
And these are just some other resources that we've added to for you to go peek around and poke around in. We just want to give you some things you can go look through. So
Right,
these are some of the things that
Go ahead, Melissa.
no, these are just some of the things I've used in my classroom and some of my teachers have used, you know, just to get ideas, even if it is just to look and see, because taking someone else's idea and making your own, you just have to have somewhere to start.
Right. And Melissa found all of these. So you guys, applause to Melissa, because when you are starting out with like a checklist or a learning path for the first time, it can be hard to think, okay, normally I would teach and have them do independent activities. How am I supposed to come up with these collaborative activities? How am I supposed to come up with future right? So these are just tons of ideas and activities that are out there for you. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And it's working with others. I just saw Crystal pop up. She was one of the teachers that I worked with. You know, at the beginning of the year, my principal was like, hey, I need you to get with Crystal. And she wants to start doing some differentiated. I want you to go meet with her. And Crystal and I have made like an awesome connection. She tried all of these things and she did. Like I walked in one day and she's like, I'm changing my class. She started off changing her class, the way it looked. Like I saw her go through that whole process. It was like amazing. So, and Crystal even herself grew as a learner because she started getting her level 1, level 2, and she became a trainer. So she was like actively learning. So shout out to Crystal. Saw you on there.
Well, I was just looking all around at the tweets not the tweets, the chat, because I just got carried away and didn't check the chat. So I was seeing if there were any questions or anything I needed to check on before we kind of close out. And it looks like my screen is not wanting to show our last slide here where we thank you and tell you our Twitter handle. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can just tell you, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry it's not showing the last slide, but you can follow me at Meredith Akers, MEredithAkers. And I would love it if you checked out my blog. And again, and I'll add it in the chat, but you can also check out bit.ly/shuffle SL for student learning to get all of our resources today.
That's right. And Meredith, she will, like, whenever, like, I was a teacher and I used some of her stuff and I tweeted it and, like, Meredith answered me back. And, like, she asked me, like, how did it go? Like, she was there, like, supporting me. And she made me feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So it was awesome. So thank you, Meredith, for coming on and sharing all these wonderful ideas.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
And she's going to be back because she has lots of ideas. And so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely bowing to you. Seriously, you have saved my sanity. I know for myself, I'll be virtual teaching this year. So yes, I won't go as crazy now.
Awesome. You got some checklists to keep them on track.
Yes,
That's
definitely.
right.
Definitely.
I love how you broke down the process. You just don't dive into it. You take it step by. I love how you showed that, because that's one thing that we miss. We just say, "I want to try this," and do it. People don't realize there's a process to it, and you broke it down beautifully, Meredith.
Thank you. And thank you for tuned in. Please do, if you have any questions or need help. And exactly what Melissa said, take baby steps with it. When you're ready to jump in, don't just everybody set your own timer and go. Just baby steps and you'll get there.
Definitely. So Meredith, thank you again. We really appreciate
Thank you, everyone.
all of this valuable information you gave us. So before we close out, I do want to go over a few upcoming events we have. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. Okay, and I'll let Melissa give you some information on these.
Okay, so on Tuesday, if you join us on Tuesday evening, we are going to be talking about how to engage students in STEM virtually and in the classroom. So I've got some fellow GEG leaders. I've got my professor from graduate school at Lamar. She's going to be joining us, and then another friend that we were students together from Lamar. So we're excited to share with you some of the ideas that we have. And so that's going to be on Tuesday. And then on Friday, Friday is going to be Christina Pinto and Jessica. They're going to talk about how you can reach the littles in your classroom. So I first met Christina. I saw her at, I guess it was ISTE in Chicago. And she's the author of this book called Google Apps for Littles. And so I saw her and I knew the challenges that some of my teachers were facing about being a little nervous about going into Google and trying some of those things with their littles. So come to their session. They're going to give you some ideas because they have been doing it and living it in their classrooms.
And we'll definitely drop the link where you can go and sign up for these sessions that we're having next week and any sessions that are upcoming. Also in the chat, and you'll see it pop up too. Please fill out our feedback form. We love to hear feedback on what went well, what you'd like to see more of. So other than that, thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will
Thank
see
you
all later.